The following episode most likely contains graphic language, details of violence, and murder, and may not be suitable for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 63 of Murder with My Mother, the true crime podcast where I talk murder with my mother.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
My mother, who I might say looks awfully young to be a grandmother of 3.
Oh, we're dropping that news.
Dropping the news. I figured just, rip the Band-Aid off. And I think it will also explain my maybe lack of brain cells for the last little while. And
For the last 32 years.
Well, no, maybe not that long, but I think you explained that. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Yes, fair enough. Touché.
Touché. But no, yes, I am welcoming another baby girl this August. So that's exciting. I know all of you guys are super invested in my personal life, so I have to give that tidbit of information. But again, it will also kind of, give you guys some explanation as to why I might forget words. Or remember last episode, I'm pretty sure I gapped out for like a good 5 seconds.
Yeah,
and you
actually.
were like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just trying to survive.
Well, you were still, in the sick phase.
I've never
point.
had a pregnancy like this, so she's going to be extra special.
Yeah.
Jinx it like the last one. But no, so we are back. It is the beginning of March, and we did not talk to you guys in February at all. So, that 3-4 week, Dan's probably laughing back there because
we make empty promises as usual.
That's okay. Mothers do that. Mothers sometimes, you gotta just really
yeah, you'll get that treat later.
Yeah.
Guess what?
Yeah, you guys will hear from us in 2 weeks for sure. No, 3 weeks is a good number, like I said. But, now that we're in the second trimester, feeling better, feeling more alive. So,
yeah, and then we'll have a good trimester until the heavy breathing starts. Anyway.
Well, at least I'm not sitting on the floor of a closet this time. So
Yeah,
that's
true enough.
A little bit better. But while we were away fighting for our lives, my life, we had some current events that really tie into, they're local current events, and they actually also happen to be current events that are tied into cases that we have covered before for you guys. So Carrie Sim, you guys might not know that name right off the top of your head, but formerly known as Kelly Ellard, the woman convicted of killing teen Rena Verk in 1997, has been rearrested for violating her parole conditions. So the Surrey Police Service spokesperson, Ian McDonald, confirmed that Sim, a.k.a. Ellard, was taken into custody on a Canada-wide warrant midday Tuesday. This was in actually the beginning of January, I think February.
I think it was in February.
I think it was in January, actually. Again, we've been gone since, I think, the middle of January. So
we're in a time warp.
We are in a time warp. I've been living a time warp. But anyway, she was rearrested on a Canada-wide warrant, and she was arrested in South Surrey. So at the time of Rena's murder in Victoria, she, again, was known as Kelly Ellard. So that's what Killer Kelly.
And that was our case number 1.
It was, yeah. So she gave birth to her first child after becoming pregnant while she was in prison. And according to the parole board's 2024 decision, she had a second child while she was out on day parole. So in March of last year, the board extended her day parole with conditions that prohibited her from consuming alcohol or drugs and from having any contact with any members of Rena's family. She was first released on day parole in 2018, but was later brought back before the parole board due to concerns over domestic violence and a positive urine test for codeine. And then in 2021, she was arrested again after a decline in her behavior. So really, she just can't stay out of trouble.
She can't act right.
Well, and also when you're institutionalized from a young age, she's been in jail she not really, because she wasn't really in jail. If you look at like Warren Glowatsky, he was pretty much in jail from the minute he was arrested. He stayed in jail, right? He's out now. And we haven't heard anything about him.
No, so he appears to have made a change in his life for the better.
Yeah, exactly. Well, remember, he became close with Rena's mother and family, and he actually advocated, went around and did talks for people to kind of stay out of that lifestyle. And like Mom said, if you guys have been with us since the beginning, you'll remember that Rena's case was the first one that we ever covered. And it's a story that stuck with us and many others for decades. And now her killer is back in the headlines yet again. But they haven't commented if she's still in custody, so I'm sure. But also the pressures for a regular person who hasn't been incarcerated to have 2 children and a seemingly tumultuous relationship with her partner, who is also in jail for some time. Basically, life is hard, especially with that. So I'm sure it's not the last time that we will hear of Carrie Sim getting arrested.
Crazy.
So.
I just can't imagine. I mean, I didn't realize she was in this area.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine if I was in
us.
South Surrey at the Walmart or
And
whatever
saw her?
and saw her. I'd
I
be like,
know.
oh my
I would be
God.
like, holy fuck, it's Kelly, it's Killer Kelly,
Yeah.
right? Like, oh my God. So, yeah, it's, again, the good old Canadian justice system. But, you know, she was very young, obviously, when she committed that offense. But I think time and time again,
Yeah.
you're doing the same things. It's kind of redundant. And she should, you know, probably might have to relook at that. But again, good old Canada. So,
Well, speaking of Canada.
yeah, speaking of Canada, our next current event is
So you
mind-blowing.
guys will remember that we did the case of Trina Hunt. Well, Lion Hunt has actually
AKA Ian. 'cause
Ian
we're,
Hunt,
you know,
AKA
getting a little bigger now. We've got to be a little bit more careful.
has been charged. The husband of Trina Hunt, whose remains were discovered near Hope, BC, more than 4 years ago, has been charged with 1 count of indignity to human remains in connection with her unsolved homicide. According to the Integrated Homicide Investigation Team, IHIT, 52-year-old Ian Hunt was charged on February the 4th, but is not currently in custody. Big surprise.
Mm-hmm. Even this charge, to be
This
honest with
charge,
you, is
honestly,
ridiculous.
his first court appearance is scheduled for March 5th in Port Coquitlam, and I know that one of the groups that's on Facebook has a bunch of people that are going to
rally,
head their
basically,
rally
right?
in Wear Purple for Trina. Trina Hunt was reported missing from her home in the Heritage Mountain neighborhood by her husband on January the 18th, 2021. We covered Trina's murder in episode 45. So if you haven't listened to that, I recommend you go back and listen. You'll be even more outraged than you probably already are. And like many of you, we are confused by this charge. So Ian Hunt initially claimed that he had no idea where Trina was, but later admitted they had been in Hope on a so-called digital detox, in quotations with my fingers.
Your bullshit quotation?
Yes.
That's what I like to call them.
Now, with this charge, it raises even more questions. If he had any involvement with her remains, wouldn't that suggest he's responsible for more than just an indignity to them?
Yeah, like murdering her. I mean,
Well,
that's
and-
obviously our speculation. We're just speculating here. But this charge just leaves so many unanswered questions. Like, does law enforcement have evidence that he tampered with her body or with her remains? And if they did, wouldn't that be enough to charge him with her murder? Or is this just the first step toward further charges? Like, either way, it's very concerning. So,
Well, and another major issue in the justice system itself, in Canada, like many other crimes, the charge of indignity to human remains carries very little actual prison time if you're found guilty. Considering the circumstances of this case, that's unsettling. I think that I heard
it's like
that
2
it's a
to 5
max
years.
of 5 years.
Yeah, it's literally 2 to 5 years. And in this country, if he spends 5 minutes in jail, it'll be like, oh, you get good, time served,
Yeah.
which is like going to be 50 times what you really actually served. And you'll be out and you won't even have to do any time. Like, that's usually what we see. But we will obviously continue to keep you guys posted with any updates as this case develops. And by the time this episode comes out, it will be the 6th of March. So it will be the day after. So you guys will have to wait another month and a half for any updates if we get any, but just kidding.
Crazy.
So for today's episode, I kind of wanted to just touch on this episode's fucked right up, to be
Yes,
honest with you.
it
It has
is.
a lot of
It
layers,
is.
like a lot of cases that we do. But in our society, trust is one of the most fundamental parts of our society, right? We trust doctors to heal us and teachers to educate us and guide us and dentists and chiropractors to care for our well-being, along with so many other people that we see, you know.
Well, and as soon as someone has a title, I mean, even you're raised as a child to
trust these people.
Trust these people.
So these professionals they hold positions of authority, and with that authority, like I said, comes a really deep level of trust. When we step into a doctor's office, a classroom, or a treatment room, we assume that the person in charge has our best interests at heart. But what happens when that trust is shattered? What happens when the very people we rely on, people who take an oath to do no harm, abuse their power instead? Unfortunately, not everyone in these roles honors the responsibility they've been given. Some take advantage of their authority in the worst ways imaginable, preying on those who are vulnerable and looking for care. Today, we are going to talk about a case of just that. A young woman who not only had the courage to speak out against a doctor abusing their power, but ultimately lost her life because of it. This local story is so shocking, so full of corruption and betrayal, that it literally feels like something out of a movie. But this isn't fiction. This really happened, and today we're going to break it all down for you guys. So with that, we will get into the episode.
Parents Chris and Susan Simmonds were originally from the UK and moved to British Columbia in 1968. They had their first daughter, Katie, and then 18 months later welcomed their second daughter, Sean. While Katie was a brunette and Sean was a blonde, that was about the only difference between the two sisters, and they were super close to each other.
Well, I think also, it goes one of two ways. When you're that close in age, either you are like each other's shadows or you don't get along at all.
Exactly.
So, hoping for the 4-year age difference to be the second one. Or no, wait, the first.
Well, and 4 years age difference, I was 4 years different from my brother.
And you tortured him the whole
Yes,
entire time.
totally.
That's great. I'm excited.
Well, at 19 and just a day away from turning 20, Sean lived with her sister Katie in their Aunt Jillian's basement suite in Surrey. The sisters, only 18 months apart, were inseparable and even had matching Jeeps. In 1993, Sean was working part-time as a waitress while attending Kwantlen College, and she had a boyfriend named Dave, whose birthday was the day before hers on January the 27th. So the day before she turned 20, she was getting ready in her basement suite, just hanging out.
For her boyfriend's, it was her boyfriend's birthday, right? So they were going to do a party that night for her boyfriend, which I know all about that.
Yeah, like it's exciting, right, at that age?
It's exciting, but it's not really that exciting when your birthday is the day before your partner's birthday.
Oh,
that's not
you
that
guys
exciting.
have the birthdays.
Yeah, my
the same
birthday
day.
is the day before Carlos's birthday, and it's one thing, but I'm sure Sean had a great time getting ready to celebrate her birthday the day after her boyfriend's birthday. But they're like Mom was saying, the sisters were very close, and the whole family seemed like they were very close. But there was also an unsettling part of their past. So both Sean and Katie had been victims of inappropriate advances from their family doctor, and they had only discovered it after discussing their experiences with each other. They had told their father about it and even confronted the doctor, who had actually threatened them. But at this time, everything seemed to be settling down. The focus was now on Dave's birthday and then Sean's upcoming 20th birthday the next day.
On the day of January 27th, 1993, Sean's Aunt Jillian was cleaning her house upstairs when she heard a knock at the door. It was a man asking if she owned the red Jeep parked out back. He claimed to have accidentally hit it with his car. Jillian said, "That's not mine. It's my niece, Sean's, and she lives in the basement." So a couple hours later, Jillian, curious about how the situation had turned out, called downstairs. When the answering machine picked up, she grew concerned, wanting to make sure everything was fine, especially since Sean was so fond of her Jeep.
Mm-hmm.
She went down to check on her. What she found was horrifying. Sean was slumped over, bloodied, and badly beaten. Jillian immediately called 911. First responders arrived and declared Sean dead at the scene. Upon closer inspection, they found 2 spent .22 caliber casings, indicating that this was no random attack. Whoever did this wanted Sean dead, but the question remained, who would want to harm her so brutally?
Well, it's one thing if you get into like an altercation about someone hitting your vehicle and like, okay, you know, if you get really upset, especially when you're young and Jeeps are expensive and, you know, but exactly. This is like so far left field that someone is going to shoot you 2 times and kill you and leave you in your basement suite and also pretend to be clearly some kind of ruse to get down there, right?
Well, and they know, like, if people in Canada don't carry guns. This isn't like
No.
the U.S.
That's why this
People
is
aren't just
very
cruising around
premeditated.
with
Yeah.
a handgun.
Mm-hmm. That's why this seems, I think, right off the top, this was very premeditated. When police began investigating the scene, trying to piece together what had happened, they discovered car insurance papers on the front hallway table that didn't belong to Sian or her sister. Instead, they were for a 1984 Dodge Omni, which matched up with reports of the strange man who had been looking to exchange information with Sian about damage to her Jeep. Upon inspecting her Jeep, police found a 12-inch key mark above the door handle, further suggesting an altercation. So obviously, I think they're really on the trail of someone intentionally damaged her car and then came with kind of a ruse of like, oh, I need to exchange information. Whose Jeep is that? So the police decided to canvass the neighborhood, and their efforts quickly proved fruitful. Several neighbors reported hearing Sian arguing with a man who had scratched her Jeep. Additionally, the mailman recalled seeing a man who matched the description of the Jeep scratcher acting strangely in the alley before walking toward a Dodge Omni. The mailman had written down the license plate number, and when police ran it, they traced it back to the owner of a 1984 Dodge Omni. However, the car's owner claimed that he had loaned this vehicle to a friend, David Schlender, for the entire day, and he returned it only in the evening.
The police were already pretty familiar with David Schlender. He was involved in the drug trade, and he had recently, just a short time before that, been a suspect in an attempted murder for shooting another drug user in a underground parking lot.
Yeah.
And once they tracked him down and brought him in for questioning, he initially, I think for 2 days, just said, like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then he agreed to speak with the police on the condition that he got a deal. So he revealed that he owed $6,000 to his drug dealer, which I think he also worked for, and the guy lived in his apartment building. This drug dealer's name was Brian West, and West had told Schlender if he killed the 2 sisters who were set to testify against his friend, a mysterious karate instructor, he would forgive his debt and even pay him extra. Schlender didn't want to kill anyone, so he said. So he eventually said that he reached a compromise where he would just go threaten one of the sisters with a gun in hopes of scaring her into not testifying. West, however, warned Schlender that if he didn't follow through, that he would kill his family.
Schlender explained that West promised him $1,250 plus the cancellation of his debt, and even gave him money to rent a car to get to the sister's house. But instead of using the money for the car rental, of course, Schlender spent it on drugs. So left with no funds, he turned to a drug buddy and asked him to borrow his 1984 Dodge Omni, which, you know...
This is like so botched because...
It is. And you probably... The best is that he left the insurance papers there. Like... So after several hours of cocaine use, because he obviously took the money from the car rental.
Went to a different drug dealer because obviously he didn't buy it from the one that hired him in the first place.
He finally went to the house. When he knocked on Sian Simmonds' door, she was on the phone and furious. He apologized for the accident, suggesting that they should exchange insurance information. But once inside, he attacked her with a gun. He shot her twice, but Sian didn't die. Instead, she fought back, refusing to die. Enraged, Schlender beat her with the gun until she eventually succumbed to her injuries. I mean, .22 caliber, from my understanding, I'm not like a big gun buff, but I think that they're really small. Yeah. So I know that a lot of times when people are shot, whenever we've done cases with .22 calibers bullets, a lot of the time it either takes a lot of shots to kill them.
Or
they're
just
just
shoot someone like in the eye or something.
Yeah, or they're just really, really hurt, but they don't usually die. So obviously she was fighting for her life, right? And him being obviously a man and probably a little bit larger than her, he used his
and he's high
power.
as fuck.
Yeah,
Like,
that
I can't
too.
imagine, like, his reaction when she started to fight back was probably, even more psychotic than most people's reactions would be.
Well, and due to his intoxication, everything went wrong, clearly. Like, that's probably not the time that you probably should never actually go and kill somebody, but you probably really, if you're going to do that, shouldn't be super intoxicated or, really fucked up. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, he left the insurance papers
Yeah, right there to be
right
found.
there, which is like so easy to
And
trace.
he was seen by several neighbors. So he clearly wasn't super careful. But he was later charged with second-degree murder. But once police tracked down Brian West, it wasn't difficult as they were already really familiar with him.
as well.
Yeah. He also had an extensive criminal record, including charges for robbery, theft, drug possession, assault, and domestic assault. And really, I think at this time, now because of the story, they're looking for this mysterious karate instructor, which I don't know about karate instructors.
Well, and
Y'all
also,
give me the heebs.
And also, I think, like, this isn't tracking with the cops because, like, you think about it, this is like a bunch of people in the drug world. And then
that's
you have
why.
this young girl who's not,
No.
that they know of at all. I mean, she owns a nice Jeep. She's living her life.
She's a student. She's
Yeah.
working part-time. Yeah, she has a very seemingly normal life. But when West went to court for his domestic assault, he had actually called a longtime friend and karate instructor, Dr. Joseph Farkas Sheralambis, as a character witness. So this connection made it clear that Dr. Sheralambis was the type of person that would associate with West.
Dr. Joseph Sheralambos was a well-known family doctor in the Whalley area of Surrey.
He also went by the name Joe.
Joe, yes, that's what his friends called him. And I think most people knew him as Joe, especially in the karate field. Originally from Cyprus, his family had Greek roots. Joe was known as a mama's boy with a harsh father. He'd always said he would become both a karate instructor and a doctor. Kind of a random combo. And he
I know one
managed
of
to
those.
achieve both. But despite his success, Joe he couldn't handle rejection. Like, he was like, he had a bad temper. He couldn't handle rejection.
He was super stubborn.
Super stubborn. And he was actually infamous for resorting to violence when he didn't get his own way. Like, with everybody, with women, if women rejected him, if he didn't get his own way, in a lot of ways, he was like turned very, very
Violent.
and crazy. So one of the most disturbing incidents involved Joe being accused of abusing a sex worker, and he also refused to pay another for her services. So when her pimp and a friend went to confront him and get the money, Joe shot one of them in the hand. He was only charged with assault because the shooting
it's
was
Canada.
deemed...
Because it's Canada.
Yeah, it was Canada, and they were in his house. So it was deemed self-defense. And this was all happening while Joe was still in medical school. And the fact that someone like that could be allowed to graduate and become a doctor raises serious questions about the vetting process.
There's a lot of serious questions to be asked in this country.
Yes.
In 1981, Joe graduated from medical school and began working at Royal Columbian Hospital before opening his own practice in Whalley. But his violent tendencies didn't stop there. Surprise, surprise. Joe was also accused of attempting to rape a coworker's teenage daughter, and this was reported to police. Joe had a serious gambling problem and spent significant amounts of money at casinos and racetracks. He even bought a racehorse. On one particular night, he took his coworker's daughter to the races. There, he tried to force himself on her, but she managed to escape his advances. She later told her father, and the incident was reported to the police, leading to charges once again. This was a practicing doctor? How was someone with such history allowed to continue in this profession?
It's so screwed up.
Yeah.
And that was also that daughter of his coworker, I think was around 15 or 16.
Mm-hmm.
So he's taking her to the racetrack, first of all.
Which is
And
completely
then-
inappropriate.
Yeah. And then, he actually almost raped her.
Yeah.
And around the same time, the doctor was also beginning to show interest in the daughter of one of his patients. She was only 13 years old, and at this time he was 31.
Ugh.
When the parents of this 13-year-old named Shelley would go to the doctor for their own health problems or any family health problem, it was said, that he would just want to talk about her, ask questions about her. Like he was seemingly obsessed with their young 13-year-old daughter, Shelley. When Shelley was 15, he started like out and out grooming her, calling her, taking her out to the races, giving her gifts, and eventually convincing her to enter into a sexual relationship with him.
Now, again, we've touched on this in a few episodes. When you are a young girl, obviously, yes, some dudes are just creepy no matter how old they are. You know it's creepy. You know it's inappropriate. But sometimes when you're a young girl, you can be naive enough to believe that this person, wow, they do really like me. They do really want to be with me. They do think that I'm older, that I'm mature for my age, or whatever it may be, right? You can't always see the red flags or the neon flags, as we say. You can't always see those when you're a young girl. But this is so inappropriate because this is someone who's 31 years old. And they are a doctor. They are your family doctor.
Been their family doctor for many years also.
So Shelley's mother, and I'm not sure because in the research, there's not a whole lot. Obviously, you know, we can listen to other cases about this. We can do our research, go into the court records, all this stuff. But Shelley's name, I'm not sure if it's actually her real name. I'm not sure if it is or if it's been changed to protect her over the years. But again, this is the name that we are going to go with. But her mother had trusted Joe in the past, basically got fed up with his behavior, but Joe didn't care or back off.
No, he was like, this happens in my country.
And
like,
I'm doing this, whether you like it or not. He made it clear with her that he wanted a relationship with her daughter. He was her doctor, and she was 15, and this was so illegal and inappropriate in every way. And Shelley's mother then went and reported this to the College of Physicians. So Dr. Charalambous was furious and threatened her and told Shelley that he was going to kill her mother, which...
Like, what the fuck?
He really does not give any fucks, but I've met people like this before. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of people where, I mean, sometimes it's just, I think that you maybe get so, I don't know,
like
you're overconfident. A God complex,
complex,
right? That you're like, I don't care. And clearly he doesn't actually really see, because he obviously knows it's wrong, it's illegal, but he does not seem to really care at all. So a hearing was scheduled by the board because obviously this doctor is having a relationship with his young client, which goes against everything
the
as a doctor.
Oath.
Yes, the Hippocratic Oath, but also just being a good, decent person. So Joe hired a really high-powered attorney to argue that he was no longer Shelley's doctor at the time. That was the issue. He thought that was the issue. So Shelley had actually testified that her mother was controlling and Joe had given her a good life and provided stability and a healthy home for her. Again, he had probably brainwashed her. And when someone's giving you nice things, maybe it's even her first sexual experience, you are going to have it blurred. And who, when you're 15, even wants to listen to their parents?
Nobody.
But obviously in this situation, it was really inappropriate. Or I can say that 85 more times, but it was proven that he was acting as her doctor when he was involved with her and that this essentially was grooming. So eventually when she turned 17, he actually had a birth certificate forged to say that she was old enough.
18.
And so basically, because she wasn't the age of consent before that, he had this thing forged and they flew to Vegas and they got married.
And I think Shelley's mom at this point was so scared that she was going to lose
she's clearly not getting any
daughter.
Help. Yeah, she's clearly not getting any help.
That she ended up retracting everything because she was... she just wanted Shelley in her life. And at this point, right away, Shelley got pregnant. Ugh. So it was also said in the research I did that when right after they got married in Vegas, he was out like all night gambling. He wasn't even.
Yeah, because he's a piece of shit.
He just went there to marry her in order for the board to get off his case.
And in order probably for some control and for to be kind of like, haha, like to the mom or to anybody else, right?
He appealed,
Well,
or he was suspended by the board. The board didn't give a shit that the mom retracted.
No, and they're
And
like,
was
you
like,
just
yeah.
married her. You literally took her away to another country, married her.
And like, they should know that the birth certificate is forged. Like,
Yeah. And so basically, I think it came out that because everybody now, like this is in the headlines, right?
Yeah.
This is like this doctor who's a family doctor who had, I think, he's in Wally, which is a part of Surrey, which is kind of a center point in Surrey. So I'm sure he had a lot of people under his care. So everyone is probably like, oh my God. And, you know, in that sense, you don't always believe everything you read. If you know him and he's a nice guy, also he's probably a manipulator and a narcissist and all these other things we're talking about. He can obviously kind of slink his way out of people really believing that he's done anything wrong, because he doesn't even believe he's done anything wrong.
he doesn't believe that he did anything wrong, and he was like outraged that he
appealed.
He had his license suspended, and he was fined, and he was suspended from practicing for 6 months. And he was just he appealed it twice.
Yeah, and
it didn't go through.
And at that time, because he's obviously angry, but who's he going to take out his anger on? Shelley. So she just got married, she just got pregnant, and now he's going to be increasingly abusive towards her, and he just continued to gamble and sleep with sex workers. And why would you even want to get married?
Yeah. And the crazy thing is that when he came back to his practice after 6 months, most of his patients continued to go to him.
Yeah, with their children.
And one of the families was the Simmonds family.
Mm-hmm.
He'd been their doctor for over 10 years.
Yep. So at this time is when the sisters, Sean and Katie, had put two and two together. Obviously, if you're reading like, oh my God, Dr. Shara Lambis like assaulted someone, he married her. You know, like
a
it's
15-year-old,
yeah, it's going to be in the newspaper. So it kind of got them talking, but amongst themselves. And basically one of the sisters had said, yeah, the doctor kissed me. And the other one's like, oh my God, he groped me. Ugh. He kissed the one right on the mouth. Like, that's so inappropriate. But again, who are you to think that your young client is not, or patient is not going to go right away and say, the doctor just kissed me on my mouth.
I can't even imagine.
I've never been to my doctor where he's even come close to me. He doesn't even want to look me in the eyes. He doesn't even want to give me a pap test when he's supposed to. He does everything in his nature to like avoid it, where I'm like, okay, well, because he's also known me since I was a newborn.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you know,
imagine we go to the family doctor
opposite.
And he's like that's
tries to neck with me.
Yeah. Fuck.
I still don't understand why it's called necking, but maybe because your necks are like moving all around. I don't know. It's a kind of an old thing to say.
Someone let us know.
Yeah, someone let us know.
Maybe it's not called that anymore.
No. But like we said earlier, their dad, as soon as the girl said, like, hey, this doctor kissed me on the mouth and groped me.
Grabbed my sister's boob.
Yeah, he reported them. Or he reported the doctor.
To the College of Physicians.
Mm-hmm. But surprise, surprise, he was just pissed right off that someone would go and tell on him.
He was irate and said he actually told people he was going to kill the board of the College of Physicians.
Okay, well, that might come back to you.
He then personally made a call to Katie Simmonds.
Who is Sean's sister.
Yeah,
which
threatening
is,
her.
Again,
called and threatened her. And she reported the call to her dad probably, and he reported it to the college, which only made things worse. He then began to focus on telling everyone he was going to kill the sisters. He would be driving by their house, their family house in Langley, and the house they lived in Surrey.
Yeah, he did not care. Clearly, that's like the theme that I'm getting from this guy, is he really didn't care about any kind of repercussions, because he hasn't really had very many.
No, he thinks he's untouchable.
He kind of is so far.
Yeah.
Or had been.
So he went to his good old friend, Brian West, and said that he would pay him to kill both of the sisters. And as we know, West passed the job on to the bumbling drug dealer and user, David Schlender. And we all know how that went. Once Shelley found out that the 19-year-old had been killed, she saw it on the news.
Yeah.
She knew right away that it was her husband.
Well, because he would say that. And and even when they saw it on the news, he's like, whatever, she got what she deserved.
Yeah.
Where it's like, wait, what other reason would she have to deserve, air quotes, bullshit marks? What other reason would she have to deserve it other than she got you in trouble? That's
exactly.
it, right? So it's kind of like, that's why Shelley's kind of like,
But Shelley's already seen him threaten to kill her mom, the College of Physicians.
And probably now, you've been with this man for a couple years, you're probably starting to realize, like, wait a minute, I was 13 when you first came on to me. Like, something's wrong here.
Well, Annie's been abusing her for years also.
So the doctor continued to talk to Shelley about how he hired Brian West and then gave her details about the murder. He told her about how the man had scratched the Jeep on purpose, and the police eventually put it together with the help of her family that there was a case going on where the girls were to testify against Joe. The police were already looking at Joe for other crimes. He had also been trading drugs to a man for sex with his daughter. Oh, this guy just gets fucking worse and worse. The daughter had reported the abuse to police, and they had him under surveillance, and they even bugged his car. So now, not only is he sleeping with sex workers while he's married to someone who is underage, he is also paying a man in prescription drugs,
a drug addict,
for access to this man's underage daughter.
I can't even
no.
It took about 6 months because he was really cagey. Like, he didn't say anything in his car where they had bugged, and he wasn't seen with Brian West.
Well, at least he was careful with that stuff.
Yeah, for 6 months it took for them to solidify the connection between Joe and Brian West. And of course, after Sean was murdered, the hearing with the board was canceled. But the police arrested Joe on the charges from the sexual assault that the father had traded his daughter for.
But
he was, of course, surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise.
He was released
was in the
on
90s,
bail.
so if this is going to let you guys know how long this has been going on for, he was released on bail, which after all the shit we have discussed, and it's still happening today, you read, like I just read the other day, sidebar, I just read the other day on Facebook, a guy who was literally, he was making child pornography with 12-year-olds. It's like a local realtor or something. He got charged. He's like in jail for like 2 years or something.
Nice.
But he was like, he had made child pornography with these girls, had loads and loads and loads of child pornography in his possession. But you know what? This guy, 2 years should be good. We'll just get him in there for 2 years, which again will probably be like 9 months.
Which is no deterrent for him to do it again.
No, because if you think about it, when you assault children or underage people or women, and you're in a facility that has none of those things, good behavior. You've been so good. You've been so good in here that you should get out.
That we're going to give you the opportunity to do it again.
What the fuck?
So at this point, Shelley was split up from Joe.
Oh.
And she had gone to a shelter to get away from him. And because he'd just become increasingly abusive towards her, and they had 3 kids at this point.
So sad.
So she came forward and ended up calling the police to report her husband's involvement in the murder. And I think if she hadn't, they weren't really getting the evidence together. So Joe had told her all of the details, as we said. And she had information. She had seen him meet with Brian West. Apparently they met in Stanley Park. And Joe had also driven her by the house of the twins and said, this is where these girls live. And she'd had enough. She'd been severely beaten and abused by Joe for 8 years.
And again, when you have kids, you kind of, if you can't advocate for yourself, and obviously she was also a victim of abuse and grooming and all these other things. But when you have 3 kids and this has gotten worse and worse and worse, I think that you kind of have to put that other stuff aside and be like, you have to do something, right?
Well, and the police put her into the witness protection program. So that's why we don't know if
that's
this
even
her real name.
This is obviously, a name that we've seen on other cases that it covered, other things that have covered this case. But yeah, I don't think that is her name.
So once Shelley agreed to testify, Joe and Brian were both arrested and charged with first-degree murder, and Joe was also charged with the conspiracy to commit murder. And David Schlender, he just pled guilty. His story changed a lot. Like, I think his story changed 6 times. And he was sentenced after he pled guilty to second-degree murder and got 25 years for Sean's murder. The Crown went ahead with the charges on Brian West and Dr. Joseph Farkas Charalambous.
It's a hard one. It's a mouthful. So
David Schlender, and he provided testimony. Eventually, after his story changed for the 6th time, he finally agreed that he had been hired to kill them, and there was no like, oh, I'm not going to kill them. I'm just going to
go and scare them. Yeah.
But of course, as usual in BC, there were several delays getting to the trial. In the meantime, many other women had come forward with sexual assault allegations against Joe. He'd been up to this for years and years.
And you see that, right? There's so many cases that we see like right now.
Yeah, like
for example,
P. Diddy
exactly, right? Sean Combs, it came out, this happened. Oh, everyone's kind of, not really sure. Then he's arrested. Other stuff starts to come out where it's like, whoa, you definitely did that. And then
and the stories are all lining up. They're
exactly.
all the same.
They're all the same. They're all obviously, we don't know with that yet because there's probably still more that's going to come out. And they're not releasing a whole lot of details. But in something like this guy is obviously a creature of habit.
Yeah.
He clearly has an MO, a modus operandi that he, does, or that he moves under. And a lot of it has to do with underage women or just women in general, and abusing them and abusing his power as someone with, because even being someone's karate instructor, you probably shouldn't date them. You probably shouldn't anything unless they're of consenting age. This kid's close to home. But it's very...
your sensei.
Yeah, that's your sensei. You probably shouldn't be...
Or have a child with them.
No, I may or may not be a product of someone's sensei being my mother's... Underage. Well, yeah, anyway, you guys can follow.
That's for another
episode.
That's for another episode.
Kind of trickles off our last episode a little bit, but yeah. But in 1994, Joe was tried in a judge-only trial.
Which he chose.
Of course.
Yeah.
And the key witnesses were Shelley and David Schlender. So Shelley testified about the years of abuse and explicit details that she was given about the murder from her husband. David Schlender, who at this point, like Mom said, had changed his story 45 times, acted like he was really remorseful, and he fingered Brian West for hiring him, but said that even though Brian had directed him to kill Sean, that he had decided to just scare her, but the situation escalated quickly, with her dying as a result. And again, we discussed he was so high on drugs that this was probably a drug-fueled decision in the first place. You're going to clear my debt? Oh, sure, I'll do this for you.
And you're going to give me money to rent a car that I'm just going to go spend on drugs?
Exactly. There wasn't a whole lot of really good thought put into this. And he clearly was not a professional hitman. So that was their first... I mean, and I love when people make mistakes like this because, again, it's going to lead in their direction. It's going to be really obvious as to what has happened here. So, obviously, and in no surprise to any of us, I love when they do this, and I'll say this every time, Joseph Charalambous took the stand in his own defense, which, of course, he did, because why wouldn't he? Because he's going to set the record straight, and he's going to let everyone know.
How dare anyone think he killed someone?
Yeah, what?
He just said he had gonna kill someone because he was mad. He just spoke out of anger. That's what he said.
Yeah, he spoke out of anger, and he was completely innocent. And the only admissions he conceded were that he was mad and that he had talked about killing both his mother-in-law and the sisters, but he actually didn't mean it. He was just mad.
And the defense went into focusing all of the energy on discrediting Shelley and David. So they were saying that Shelley was just a gold digger, that, you know, she was jealous.
Which is crazy.
Like all sorts of bullshit, really.
I respect lawyers, but like defense lawyers, sometimes the reach is so far where you're victim blaming and you're doing all this stuff. Obviously, I know that their duty is to, you know, protect their clients, but like sometimes like read the fucking room. Like don't take on a guy like this. This guy's horrible.
Well, and there was so much more on the record about him, like all the other stuff he did, that the
because
judge
by this time, like you said, so many other people are coming out of the woodworks to be like, hey, this guy did this to me and this guy did this to me.
And the judge, of course, saw all of that and factored it in when he sentenced him to 2 life sentences.
Good, because I like that judge.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of judges. I mean, there are a lot of judges, but sometimes people are swayed.
Well, and what the fuck?
Especially
like,
here.
What was with the board of the colleague, like the medical
Giving him
board,
his license back?
giving him his his license back, but it came out later that there had been more reports filed on him that hadn't even been, like nothing had been done about them. So the family of Sean filed complaints against them.
Good.
Also, because things need to change for their inadequate investigation into the many reports against the doctor. And guess what? That case was dismissed. So the trial of Brian West came afterwards, and he was also found guilty, but was surprise.
Yeah, I guess. I like your singing voice today.
He was
really
granted day parole under the Faint Hope Clause in 2016 after 23 years.
The what?
The Faint Hope Clause.
The sick fuck clause?
Yeah, the sick fuck clause.
If you guys go back at least a few episodes, the faint hope clause is something that if you were charged with something
that you're likely to never get out, they're going to give you a faint hope.
Yeah, they're going to give you a faint hope. But apparently the faint hope clause is actually like, I mean, now they don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
But they still honor it if you were charged with something under the faint hope clause, let's say, again, in 1993, 1994, you know.
Like right at the end.
They're still honoring it. It's crazy to me. So
he only did 23 years in prison. David Schlender also did 23 years, but that's because he died in prison. Dr. Charalambous tried filing multiple appeals, but they were all denied. And then he went on to give interviews, I think, to the Vancouver Sun.
Probably to everybody, anyone who will listen.
And just to lie about all of it. And I honestly, before we started doing research into this case, thought he was dead.
Mom texts me like, he's still alive?
Yeah, because he just tried to get parole in January 2025.
Yeah, he'll never stop.
No.
Somebody like that is never going to stop, and they're never going to try to seek that control of talking to the media and spinning their narrative and all this stuff. They don't ever stop. It's crazy, and it's making me tired just from thinking about all the energy it must take. I'm a little tired these days, but it's like I'm building a liver right now, so
just can't even believe it. Like that case is,
I don't even want to go to the doctor. That's how much this case just freaked me out. Well,
have your baby
technically
at home.
I can't. The way my anatomy is set up here, I cannot. But yeah, I can't even believe that case is real. But he is still in jail, and I'm hoping because he has 2 life sentences that he will never, ever, ever be able to trick the parole board or anything like that. The fact, I know I've said this a lot of times, but the fact that we do not have in this country, especially someone like that. You know, again, we've talked. Sometimes you kill somebody. You're young. Something happens. There's circumstance. Okay, 25 to life. I could see that. Maybe. But sometimes I think that we need to have life with no chance of parole ever.
Yeah, but they say that. That's the thing. They say life with no chance of parole.
They don't. We don't even say that in this country.
Yeah, but even in the States when they do say it,
well, at least in the States, most of the time they do stay in jail for the rest of their lives. And we've discussed the balance of very lenient countries like us. I know we've had some listeners from New Zealand who say that they kind of are more criminal focused also on like the criminal rehabilitation. But like a lot of people, especially people who murder people because they have assaulted them and now they're trying to keep them quiet, that goes back to being a sexual offender, and those people I don't think can ever be rehabilitated. Again, if you're in jail and there's no kids, there's no underage women, there's no one for you who your victim type is, yeah, you are going to be able on good behavior, right? You are going to be able to demonstrate maybe some rehabilitation because there's nobody in there for you to victimize. But the minute you get out, and especially if you get your medical license back and you're like, la la la, I'm a family doctor, like seeing children and young women, it's just
it's crazy. And I actually remember when all of this was unfolding because I had just moved here at the time.
Well, I was like
you were
a year
baby,
old.
Yeah. And I remember like just being like, what the fuck?
Yeah. You moved here with
Crazy.
your karate instructor.
Yeah.
So my dad was mom's karate instructor. So if that says anything to you guys, yeah. So that's why maybe this one's a little extra like, ugh, this guy. But there's so many signs where this man, not my dad, but this man clearly had control issues, narcissistic tendencies. He was clearly a pedophile. He was clearly looking for someone he could exert his control. And then you got it, and then you're just going to continue to do all this other crazy stuff. It's yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine the impact this had on Sean's family. Not only her sister, but her parents. I know that they went on to fight for justice, but I know that at one point they didn't have, like anyone whose family is murdered.
Right? It's the burden that's put onto them. Actually, now that we're done that episode, and another segue, there was the walk on February 14th for Lindsay Buziak, who Jeff Buziak, her father, always is there. He comes to Victoria and he leads the walk for her, but there's still been nothing in that. There's been no, but that's what happens here. It's like the leads run dry and the families are the ones that are left to fight for justice for their family. So I'm sure that Sean's family will always remember her and fight for her. And I'm surprised that more people don't know about this case, especially locally, but it was because it was almost 32 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, 20 years ago, because I'm not that old.
But time flies.
Time flies when you're having fun. So, but yeah, so that was episode 63. And yeah, I wanted to say that you guys, I don't know who's into merch, a lot of people, but we do have lots of shirts. Mom, your shirt reminded me. Mom's wearing her repping her Murder with My Mother shirt. And her Murder with My Mother socks. Yeah. So we have quite a few new items in our merch store. We have mugs and coasters. If any of you guys want to put us on your tables, and, we have a lot of different stuff. We could do magnets. We have pretty much everything you guys want. So if you guys are interested in some merch, let me know. You guys can DM us on all of our socials, Murder with My Mother Podcast, or you guys can send us an email, murderwithmymotherpodcast@gmail.com.
And I think we'll put some pictures on our socials of the merch so that you know what's available.
Exactly. So
excellent.
Yep. But that was another case, and can't wait to bring you guys the next case. We have some really big cases that I'm excited about. Yeah.
But we're not giving a time frame.
No. Maybe it's going to be in a couple months. No, I'm starting to feel better. So I think that now, as I say that, I'm getting sweaty. Like, I don't know. You never know. This one is showing me that you never know. So, but yep. Thank you guys for your continued support and all of your love on all of our socials. And yeah, just reaching out, telling your friends, telling your family, just telling even people you don't like, hey, go listen to this fuck you, go listen to this podcast. I don't know, but yeah, we love you guys, and we will talk to you next time. So this has been episode 63 of Murder with My Mother, the true crime podcast where I talk murder with my mother. Bye guys.